as I was able to tell, saw the woman that he brought with him living once again, waking up and looking towards him as a direct result of his task being fulfilled and Dorman's promise carried out. Unfortunately, in actuality, he has no such luck and wakes up again to get back to the daily, or perhaps hourly, grind. Now that I say that, it's kind of hard to decipher how much time passes over the course of the game. It never really occurred to me to think about it, but now I really enjoy the idea that Wander just battles these creatures non-stop for hours on end. Anyway, back to the cutscene. It's definitely an interesting one, although brief. It piques your investment as well by being the only extensive deviation from the norm we've seen thus far after defeating a Colossus, and we're about to fell our 9th. I can't help but wonder if the potency of that happening would be emboldened further if it lacked the very obvious visual filter over it as a sort of fake-out for the player. Our goal is that smoke cloud further to the west. The land where trees nary grow, it sleeps in a dry lake bed, a rude awakening. The scale of the world really speaks volumes in this area. The rolling hills just feel incredibly expansive to me, especially with the multiple save shrines they house. Atop them, white-tailed lizards thrive thanks to our pacifist playthrough. Well, at least pacifist as far as lizards are concerned. And then the abrupt change of scenery hits you like a truck. Even before passing fully into the colorless fog, you see nothing but soil and lifeless trees alongside a massive scar etched into the earth, living side by side with the rather flourishing area that precedes it. And here we are. These geysers are gorgeously pulled off, which I personally attribute to the accurate recreation of mist that funnels from the top of the spume. I am readily able and willing to admit that I forgot where the boss was hiding exactly and decided to go for a bit of a jaunt around the area to find it, but you can just pretend that I wanted you, my lovely viewer, to be familiar with the boss arena before I started the fight. You know, only if you want to. I won't tell anyone. Not the smoothest of fight introductions, but we did get to see it rear back threateningly, and that definitely made it a bit more worthwhile. This is Basaran, the 9th Colossus. He's a big-ass turtle, and his projectiles hit harder than one might expect them to. It may sound a bit strange, but I like his face a lot, the bulkiness of it all. He's one of the colossi that just strikes your memory and make themselves hard to forget. For the longest time, that is to say, My first 3 or 4 playthroughs, I felt that Basaran was one of the least enjoyable Colossi right alongside Barba, but eventually I came to really enjoy the encounter for its uniqueness when all of the Colossi are considered together. With the geysers being pretty much the only thing of note in the area, it doesn't take long to figure out the primary mechanic to this fight. By a flip of the same coin, Aggro's assistance is absolutely vital, which makes for a nice change of pace from the previous few fights. Basaran wasn't the most gracious of hosts this time around. I had a bit of trouble getting him to place himself correctly underneath the geyser. Though the puzzle, if you can call it that, for the encounter is rather simple, having to guide the Colossus while on horseback makes for an interesting challenge. Basaran's relentlessness with his projectiles makes for some added stress as well, especially when how much damage they do is taken into consideration. It can be pretty heart-pounding to evade these orbs. Even a successful attempt can sometimes be awarded with a healthy dose of camera shaking, and seeing them fly towards you at such a pace is no walk in the park either. This is one of those times where I trusted Aggro to carry me through the encounter without doing any work myself, and she really let me down. I'm very pleased that her skull is as hard as it is, though. That whinny hurts my heart just a little bit every time I hear it. I don't want Aggro to come to any harm at all. Not for any gameplay reason, mind you, just because it makes me sad. I was pretty happy with myself for that little drive-by volley there. If I never pull off anything even remotely as slick as that for the rest of the playthrough, I would be content, and also not surprised. With the beast overturned, Wander has to fight tooth and nail with physics and collision detection to get to his other side and begin to climb. On top of Basaran is legitimately one of the scariest moments in this game. I was just able to stay on by the skin of my teeth there. When he flips, if you even manage to stay on top, the realization that there is no fur to grab onto to save yourself sets in, and while constantly screaming at the top of your lungs, you immediately make a beeline for the head. Or is that just me? Either way, once you reach Basaran's head, he's easy pickings. Basaran boasts a flexible neck in these dodges, but it does little to deter Wander from getting what he came for. Time and time again, the ancient sword is plunged into his flesh. I was so close to finishing him off I could taste it. I could have just finished the job with a slow plunge attack, but I was afraid that I would either miss the sigil because of his shaking, or be launched off entirely. The smooth shadow that creeps up the entirety of each Colossus corpse looks especially satisfying with Basaran. It's back to action for Wander, an isolated sand dune. Its tracks are well hidden, shaking the earth, its gaze upon thee. To get to where we need to go, we must traverse the western plains as we just did to reach Basaran, but head even past his arena. It's a bit of a long walk, so I'm going to fill up that silence by talking about Eco. Just to get it out of the way, if you're worried about spoilers for that game, don't be. I won't be delving very far past the opening sequence of it. Eco was the first game developed by Team Eco, the same people behind the creation of this wonderful game that you're watching now. The two games do share some similarities, chiefly in the atmosphere and aesthetic design departments, but on the whole, they're entirely separate entities with entirely different experiences as you play through them, and I have to commend the development team for that. There are a few things that people speculate on that directly tie the two games together, but we'll have to get into that later on. In Eco, you play as the titular boy. He was born with a pair of horns atop his head, and thus banished from his home village and imprisoned inside a far-off, sequestered castle amidst a body of water. A tremor of some kind knocks his cell out of place within the wall, and its crash into the ground breaks it open, promptly freeing him. Shortly thereafter, he meets a mysterious girl who speaks a language both he and the player cannot understand, as her subtitles are mere symbols and hieroglyphs. The game takes off from there as you explore the castle and try to find a way out for the both of you. To keep the explanation of the game as basic as possible, it's a puzzle platformer with brief combat sequences. If you have yet to play it, you own a PlayStation 3 or even a PlayStation 2, and that sounds at all interesting to you, I cannot recommend it enough. It may be quite short, but it encourages at least 2 playthroughs quite well, with the fact that in its New Game Plus mode, the language that the player previously could not understand receives actual subtitles, revealing a lot more of the plot and subtext in a very unobtrusive way. As with most games, I would recommend going into it with as little outside information as you can possibly manage, and yes, I do acknowledge that I may have hindered my own advice ever so slightly in that regard. If you feel that way, I apologize. When trying to decide on a game to play as my sort of comeback, though I'm kind of hesitant to use that word, ASMR playthrough after so much time had passed, Eco actually came to mind before Shadow of the Colossus did. I went back and forth on which one I was going to pick to play through, and at the end of the day, obviously, I settled on Shadow of the Colossus. It is the slightly longer game, at least to my recollection, but what it boiled down to was that while I do love Eco dearly, I love Shadow of the Colossus just a little bit more, and I wanted that passion to manifest in the quality of the playthrough, and I hope that it has. And of course, I hope you've been enjoying yourself so far. Reaching this small valley, we've arrived at our destination. Wander's next foe is lying in wait within the cave to our left, and he has no choice but to race headlong towards his adversary. Just as soon as he learns to negotiate the terrain a little better, Aggro is a beast of a horse for taking this jump here and sticking the landing. The bats are a nice touch. As far as I'm aware, this is the only location where you can find them. I would love to be corrected on that if you're aware of another, so I can go and check it out. This is Dirge. His arena is gigantic, and it quickly becomes apparent as to why. From beneath the loose sand, he keeps up with Aggro with excessive ease, riding just on her coattails. The first time I encountered Dirge, I probably ran around on Aggro for 10 minutes trying to figure out what there was to do. I tried guiding him towards the pillars of rock in the center, hoping for him to hit them and be stunned, but he evaded them at every attempt. I tried to guide him to the outer walls to do the same thing, but once again I was unsuccessful. I even remember running around in circles for a while in a desperate attempt to see if I could possibly make him dizzy enough to hit these obstacles, and then it dawned on me that the solution had been staring me right in the face the entire time. The quality of the fur on this boss is really impressive. Incredibly impressive for the PS2 era at the very least, even if the game was released just over a year before the release of the PlayStation 3. Being on nothing but your own 2 feet in this fight is pretty nerve-wracking, even if you know the boss just fled in the other direction. Just as soon as I hopped on Aggro, Dirge began his second charge. Not entirely sure about that one. Thank goodness I wasn't on hard mode. Dirge's absolute relentlessness with his squirming here. I shouldn't have even considered taking the chance with a plunging attack, but I still couldn't resist trying at least one more time. And for the finisher as well. What I lack in optimization, I make up for with style. Or at least that's what I tell myself. As always, thanks again so much for watching.